Thank you, Chairwoman. Yeah, I want to take up this issue really quickly because, we disagree, Maria, on this. I don't think there's ever been a bias of the United States um, in against conservative leaders and in favor of leftist leaders. In fact, when you look at the history of the U.S. involvement in Latin America, Latin America has often, I mean, the United States, unfortunately, in decades past, worked to undermine the leadership of leaders on the left and treated leaders on the right as friends. And in fact, supported what were some of the most brutal dictatorships, like the Pinochet ruling in Chile. And so, when we think about how we provide U.S. assistance, how we provide taxpayer money, the way we should be thinking about it is who, who is operating consistent with U.S. values and what we stand for. So democracy, freedom, respect for human rights. Really, regardless of where you are on the political spectrum, whether you're on the left or the right as a leader, we ought to support leaders who are pursuing those things. And uh, so Consuelo Porras, as I understand, have been sanctioned for severe corruption. That's why we're not working with her, not because she's got a certain ideology. Uh, and Bukele also, I think it's true. I mean, he has gotten a lot of crime off the streets and has scared a lot of people, especially young men. Um, but so has Xi Jinping in China. Um, and so, if the question is, well, why don't we just let people do what they're going to do? Okay, I get that. But the question for us is, are we going to back them up with money to commit human rights abuses and other things that we would never allow for in the United States ourselves? Now, bear in mind, in the last few weeks, we've seen some disturbing instances of people literally been picked off the street for having exercised their First Amendment rights by government agents who don't identify themselves, who aren't dressed in uniform, and who barely present credentials, if at all. Those are the kinds of activities that you're used to seeing in countries that violate people's rights. So just with that disagreement, um, let me get into a question really quick. Ms. Kenny, as you know, the administration is conducting multiple reviews of foreign assistance programs, and I believe those programs have been incredibly disruptive and that the review has not been done in good faith. In 2019, the first Trump administration did something similar on a smaller scale. They unilaterally froze $400 million in foreign assistance funding in Central America for over 14 months. At the time, I, along with other colleagues, requested the GAO assess the impacts of that freeze. The GAO determined that many programs, including State Department INL bureau programs, had been adversely affected. And based on your experience with the 2019 freeze, do you expect adverse effects from the ongoing freeze on many INL programs?
Thank you for that question. Yes, when we reviewed the freeze in 2019, we found that there were a number of adverse effects. To the State Department, we found that about 65 or 39% of INL programs actually suffered adverse effects, where they had to reduce the geographical region in which they were implementing programs. They had to reduce the number of beneficiaries who could participate in trainings. They had to reduce the quality of programs. And programs that relied on implementing partners suffered even more consequences because they had to lay people off and they were unable to pick up those programs when the funding resumed. However, that funding was really just a freeze of one-year funding, and in a lot of ways, those programs were able to continue because of funding that was still available in the pipeline from prior year's funding. We haven't had an opportunity to review the funding freeze that is occurring right now, but my understanding is that those programs aren't able to access prior year funding either, and so my understanding is that they're not continuing at all. We
Uh,
haven't had. I'm sorry.
Sure, sure. No, and thank you for that. And let me ask a follow-up really quick. Will the GAO be willing to conduct a review of the ongoing freeze and cancellation of hundreds of millions of dollars in foreign assistance programs?
Yes, we'd be happy to do that work.
Thank you so much. With that, I yield back, Chairwoman.
Thank you, Ranking Member Castro. And now